Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be giving you my natal chart analysis of Nashville, Tennessee. I couldn't find the birth time online, so I am using a solar sunrise chart, and which pretty much puts, it does put the sun at the same position as the ascendant. So anyway, well, when I first looked at the chart, of course, the sun is in Virgo. And this is, and also the moon is likely in Virgo. The moon is in Virgo based on the solar sunrise time. And the percentages say it is in Virgo. I do favor a Virgo moon for Nashville over the Leo moon. But a Leo moon would occur if it was early in the day. But anyway, excuse me. I think a lot of this is where, you have a very strong work ethic in Tennessee, in Nashville, Tennessee. And the sun in Virgo, this could be attributed to why there could be a strong focus and emphasis on this. Now, the moon likely in Virgo would show a similar energy, but more on a subconscious level. And it could be an emotional need as far as working hard, being diligent, being meticulous with details, doing whatever Virgo like things, extrapolation of data, organization, being clean. Now, the thing about this too, I noticed when I looked at the chart that 6 of the 10 planets fall on the bottom half of the chart, which would suggest slightly more introversion than extroversion, a little bit more pessimism than optimism, being a little bit more subjective than objective. Also, 7 of the major 12 astrological influences are in feminine signs, assuming that the moon is in Virgo, which reinforces a little bit more introversion and introspection. Now, what I noticed too, though, I looked at the midheaven is in Gemini, based on doing the solar sunrise chart, and this would perhaps indicate why I think a lot of the people that I had worked with, were very gossipy. You would tell one person something and you have so many people inquire about what you stated to that person, within a day. And the thing too is also you find people working more than one job or more than one career. And I think it kind of gives this public image and reputation of being very dull and superficial. And the thing about, and two-faced as well. Now, I noticed as well that the third quadrant in this chart was empty. And the third quadrant consists, of course, of houses 7, 8, and 9. Now, this put a lack of emphasis on relationships and perhaps collegiate studies, and also the expansion, perhaps, of intimate relationships and just your important, maybe important friendships, perhaps your important relationships. And the thing, too, is I would also look at another thing that I've noticed is that really Nashville really they don't seem like they have much incentive to connect with others outside their immediate family and the people they're close to home with. And I think a lot of this is attributed to the lack of planets in houses 7, 8, and 9. Now, there is a preponderance of planets on the left side of the chart, now, which could suggest that Nashville can be very self-driving, have much really about self-initiation, I guess you could say, about doing things without having to be cajoled by others or collaborating with, or even collaborating with others on projects. It's more about do-it-yourself kind of attitude and outlook here, I believe. So anyway, well, a thing that intrigued me was that Mercury is actually in its dignity in Virgo, an analytical Virgo, I should say. Now, this was a little bit of a surprise to me because, no offense or anything, but the people seem like they're a little bit backward here in Nashville, Tennessee. Maybe that's attributed to the fact that Mercury in the solar sunrise chart is retrograde, and it also falls in the 12th house of accidental, fall, and detriment. And I think this also, where the driving can be somewhat atrocious here, maybe that plays a reason for that as well, because Mercury can be connected with transportation. It is retrograde and in the 12th house of limitations and restrictions. Now, another thing is is, I mean, and again, I do believe that could be strongly attributed astrologically as to why the driving could be so deplorable. And also, I mean, Neptune is in the third house in this chart as well, so it could give some confusion in terms of driving, and I think it makes really maybe when drivers appear very nebulous and unclear, and they really don't always, whether it's not signaling, I mean, somewhat ambiguous, maybe not signaling before turning, and people not knowing whether they're going to go straight or they're going to make a turn and wind up turning, for example, without putting their blinkers on. So anyway, another thing that I noticed too is that you look at this chart, and in the solar sunrise chart, Saturn in Libra falls in the second house. And I think a lot of this, I mean, I hate to say this, but I do see Nashville as really, again, having that superficial charm and a lot of fake friendliness. You have, I mean, Saturn being in Libra, that almost is like a responsibility to being tactful, polite, and diplomatic, and real almost where it's compulsory. It's almost like I think a lot of Nashvillians just do this out of more of a need, over more of a requirement, as opposed to it being natural. Now, another thing about this is that when I look at this too, this could be, and being in the second house, this could be something that they strongly value. Now, the conjunction to Uranus from Saturn, maybe this is why it could come off as somewhat bizarre to others, and people maybe see the Nashville behavior as a little bit strange and bizarre, and they could kind of see through some, I guess you could say, the transparency, so to speak. Now, another thing is that the Uranus-Saturn conjunction could be an indicator as to why maybe they're a little bit backward here, and they have they're slower in the development of things that are innovative and ingenious and staying up with new technology. Now, the thing about this too is, assuming that the moon is in Virgo, which in all probability it is, the final signature is in Virgo, and the final signature, I believe, can give an overall feel or tone to the chart, but I don't think it supersedes the sun, moon, or ascendant in terms of its significance or impact on the chart. Now, I think a lot of this could reinforce and reaffirm the already strong Virgo energy in the chart, though. Now, majority of planets in Earth could indicate an emphasis on pragmatism, practicality, and being rather economical, and also being very astute in financial matters, generating income. And there could be a strong focus on premeditation, planning, prudence, and caution as well. Now, also, most of the major astrological energy, and when I'm talking about the major astrological energy, I'm referring to 10 planets, the MC, and the ascendant. Most of them do fall in mutable signs. So because of this, this could be give Nashville very strong adaptability, pliability, making the best of adverse situations and circumstances, but yet could give people a rather vacillating, changeable energy as well. And the thing too is that people in Nashville, though, I mean, being adaptable, they could often be the ones to make the compromises. People could be very compromising in terms of their relationships. And the thing about this too is that there is also a mutable T-square configuration in the chart that consists of the Sun in Virgo in the first house, making an opposition to Pluto in Pisces in the sixth house, and both those planets are receiving a square by the Gemini MC. So I think in one way this may manifest as that you see perhaps the scrupulous, proper, by the book, I guess you could say, managers, sometimes authority figures, people in that leadership capacity could opposes perhaps employees that have I call powerful lethargy, and the Gemini being the MC at the point of that over accentuation, emphasis, compensation of reputation, public image, shows that maybe this overemphasis perhaps winds up resulting in maybe a lot of people trying to outmaneuver the system, and thievery perhaps is how I see this. Now, another way this can manifest, though, is that you can have given this opposition, and still talking about this mutable T-square configuration that involves the Sun in Virgo, making that opposition to the Pluto in Pisces, and both being squared by the Gemini MC. You could have this going against, you could have this, you could say this coercion, manipulation, manipulative controlling tactics by duplicitous traitorous employees, which of course that's Pluto in Pisces in the 6th house, going against maybe somewhat judgmental, critical authority people that like to make that good first impression, being that Sun in Virgo in the 1st. And what happens is, as a result, with the Gemini MC being the focal point, there could be an overcompensation, perhaps an emphasis, perhaps on lack of persistence, and maybe the strong vacillation in career aims and objectives, because as a result of what I just described, you may wind up having a lot of lack of persistence in this, and also dealing in these situations. I mean, that is what could, I think, transpire because of that, and really, those are some things that can happen as a I believe as a result. And really the main thing is you have a lot of that Virgo energy going against the Pisces energy, and a lot of that is just a lot of conflict between work, and I think and a lot of this is in lethargy as well. And really, well, anyway, the next thing that I want to talk about is, well, you have Pisces on the 7th house cusp, and that can make it difficult to see open adversaries, and they could be rather nebulous, I think, really, and unsure. This is why, part of the reason why I think in Nashville, Tennessee, why it's very difficult to see the open adversaries. Open adversaries. They could be rather nebulous and unclear and vague, and they're very deceptive and duplicitous. A lot of these enemies are people that are doing drugs. I think the one out there, alcoholics, drug users, people that unfortunately are in, I guess you could say, less fortunate situations, such as the impoverished, the oppressed, the homeless, the hungry. These are a lot of, unfortunately, these are a lot of people that are, at least, are seen as the open enemies, the open adversaries. And the thing about this too is that another thing about the chart of Nashville, Tennessee, is that you have Aries on the 8th house cusp. That is perhaps why people may be so impetuous and really impulsive in terms of a rush to judgment on criminal profiling, to cast aspersions on sometimes innocent people. And I think it also shows why, 8th house being connected with crime, as to why this has become a very volatile area as well. Nashville right now, it's like, in terms of there was something on the internet that I think it's like, 1 in 100, somewhere in there, that you have a chance of being a victim of a crime in Nashville, Tennessee. And it's becoming, I believe, one of the most dangerous cities in the United States. So they could talk about all of this benevolence and kindness and all the humanitarianism that is supposedly connected with Nashville, Tennessee. But I just want to tell you, from a non-astrological vantage point and just stating things flatly about the city, is that it's a terrible misconception and misperception of this city. I don't recommend anybody coming here. It's very difficult to make friends. A lot of it looking at the synastry, I think, at least, for me, maybe it's impacted me stronger than a lot of other people as far as the astrological compatibility synastry, so to speak. Nashville's Pluto falls in my falls in my 11th house, and maybe that's why it's basically obliterated or destroyed any chance of having many friends or acquaintances in the city. Another thing I noticed too with the synastry here, what makes it negative and adverse to me, is that Nashville's Saturn makes a very close conjunction to my Jupiter. So basically that kind of, I think because of that aspect with the synastry with me in Nashville, is why that limits my exuberance and enthusiasm. My Jupiter is in Libra, so it's almost like it's limiting and putting a clamp on the ability maybe to expand relationships here. So, and being in the 6th house of the daily routine. And also too, another thing I noticed with the synastry with me and Nashville and I, is that Nashville's Mercury in Virgo makes a conjunction to my South Node in Virgo. So I think, well, you probably figure, well, how does that energy manifest? Well, I think what it is when you have, like, you know, the South Node making a conjunction to someone in synastry, a lot of times that could be dissipating, deflating type energy where you're zapping energy. And the South Node person is the one that's generally going to be zapping the energy from the planet person. And in this case, I think what happens is I've noticed, like when I talk to people and I want to talk to them extensively and it's for a protracted period, a lot of times they seem to get tired of me very easily if I talk for more than a minute or so, and I'm giving, you know, maybe my conversations are too analytical for them and they're too detail oriented, I'm telling them too much, so to speak. I think what happens is they get tired of it and then they just try to get away and end the conversation. They'll say, oh, sorry, I'll see you later, have a good day or whatever. And I think it might exasperate people. Maybe I'm tiring people out mentally, so to speak. One person I was talking to one time in Nashville, Tennessee, where I guess I was talking, you know, being you know, somewhat analytical, and he asked me if I played chess. So, I mean, there you go. And also, I believe transit Saturn is in that 4th house in that solar sunrise chart for Nashville. So it's something where it's part of the reason why I think, you know, maybe the homeless situation might actually be getting worse, and people are getting to a point where, I mean, Saturn being in Capricorn now and being in that 4th house of Nashville, Tennessee on the solar sunrise chart for them could show, I mean, more restrictions, limitations in home and family life, and also emotional security. And a lot of that is attributed to the crime escalation, and of course making people feel somewhat melancholy and despondent because the energy is Capricorn. Now, also when I did the progress chart for Nashville, Tennessee, based on the soul, that's the progress chart from the solar sunrise chart. Aries was at 22 degrees, was on the ascendant, so it's almost like, you know, I think the face of Nashville, unfortunately, now has become more acerbic. Unfortunately, I think people now are starting to be more in a little bit of a hurry. They're more impatient. 22 degrees is perceived by many as that kill or be killed degree. I see it as somewhat of an adverse degree. It could be a degree of tribulation, and it could be due to combative, contentious situations. Remember that crime has escalated in Tennessee. There's a lot more volatile, violent crime than usual, and sadly that's become almost like the face of Nashville, Tennessee at this time. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for my natal chart analysis of Nashville, Tennessee. Stay tuned next time, where I'm going to be giving you my Scorpio September 2018 horoscope forecast. 2 things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.